Buying a used car, taking a simple walk around the vehicle can give you an indication, if you look for the right things, as to whether or not the vehicle's been in an accident or not. So one of the first things you want to do is stand at the back of the car and get yourself down so that you can look down the whole side of the car. Ideally do this against a curb or somewhere where there's a continuous edge that reflects in the car. Here we have a border between grass and gravel, so we can look and see that line down the side of the car. And what we're looking for is to see that that reflection is the same all the way down the car. Had maybe the front door been painted at some stage, the reflection would just get a little bit cloudy at that point, indicating that that panel had been painted. If you look at the reflection coming down the side of this car, as it moves into this rear quarter panel area, you can see that the stones are kind of getting a bit cloudy, and it hasn't been particularly well painted, this one. So it's just an indication of what to look for when you see that cloudy effect. So we know now that this panel has been painted, and not particularly well in this case. So that's just a simple little trade secret to let you know if cars had any bodywork in the past. So the next step is to actually look at each panel on the car individually. So we start here in the rear door, and what to look for, if we look down here at the door handle, is whether or not there's ever been any paint creeping onto the rubber around the handle here or here. And we also check the weather strip along here. Is there any sign of a tiny little line of silver paint creeped onto that? Again, it would indicate that this panel had been sprayed aftermarket. We then move on to the door gaps. So we check that the gap is the same width here as here, and we also do it on the vertical. We check a gap here to down here. If this has been aligned incorrectly through an accident, the gap will be smaller at the bottom than the top, or vice versa. So the next step is open up the back door of the car and focus in on this area here. If this rear quarter panel had been painted, they usually mask it to this point here, so you'll feel an edge, a paint edge along here. It'll be like a little ridge under your nail. So this one's all nice and smooth, so it's original, it hasn't been painted. But if it had, you would be indicated here by that ridge. And it's a good idea to check in here and compare this from the left to the right hand side of the car. Is this original looking? Is one side of the car all shiny and clean and silvery, and is one side all dirty? Again, it's an indication that maybe the door has been off and the car has been painted in the past. Moving on to the back of the car, what we want to do is open up the boot. And we want to check these areas here for originality. So we can see that this is kind of a bit green and a bit weathered in here, and we want to compare that to the other side to make sure both sides are actually the same. We're checking the spot welds from the factory and the sealer to see that it's all original and it hasn't been tampered with, and again we're comparing right to left to see that it's all uniform. Lift up the boot carpet and we're checking for originality of the boot for itself and that it's the same right and left, and we don't want to see any buckling or paint chipping on this area indicating a rear end accident. You want to check the exhaust as well. You can get down on your hands and knees and get right down on the ground actually and look in under the car to make sure that it's all nice and rust free in there. Get the owner of the car to start it up, give it a few revs, and make sure there's not an excessive plume of smoke out the back in a petrol one, or in a diesel one that it's not particularly massively cloudy and black. So moving on into the interior of the car, what you want to do when you get in here is first of all look visually at the steering wheel, the gear knob, the pedals. Make sure that they look like the mileage that's on the car suggests. In this case we've 58,000 miles. It should look pretty original, so should the gear stick, and there shouldn't be any excessive wear on one side or other of the pedals. So next thing you want to check inside the car is, do all the buttons and switches work? So we could start with the electric windows, operate them, lower the window all the way down and all the way back up, listening for any clicking noises. If you heard a clicking noise, it might need a new window regulator, which can be quite expensive fix. Operate the lights, operate the wipers, the horn, make sure it all works. Use the fan, listen, can you hear the 3-4 speeds working individually? If it had air conditioning, put it on, open these vents up here and feel if the air is actually being chilled. Otherwise you could have a serious expensive air conditioning compressor problem or worse.